Welcome back to another episode of the Vision Hunters podcast. I'm your host, Cody Story, and this is episode number 12, the online business and personal brand makeover master with Mike Young. Whether you're just getting started with your entrepreneurial journey or starting an online business, building your own personal brand, or even if you've been at it for a while, this show will blow your mind. It is jam-packed with practical golden nuggets that you can take action on right away. Mike is what I call a real one. He's a veteran in the online business space, and the amount of experience he's acquired over the years and the depth of his expertise is truly remarkable. He's one of the most giving and generous people I've met in a long, long time. He's a man of purpose on a mission to help change the lives of entrepreneurs who aim to turn their visions into their realities. I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to interview Mike, and I've even created a new mantra based on some of what Mike shared in this episode. I've been repeating, it's not about the end result, it's about falling in love with the process. And I've been repeating this throughout the day when my mind starts to dig into the past or when it starts trying to surf the waves of my future. It's really been helping me to stay present and focus on finding ways to help other people. This conversation was like a breath of fresh aspen air. Now, real quick, before we get into today's show, new episodes of the Vision Hunters podcast are released every Wednesday on Spotify and Apple Podcast, or you can watch the episodes on my Cody Story YouTube channel. Spelling there is Cody Story, CODY-STOREY. Don't forget the E before the Y. Some of what you'll hear in today's episode is what it was like going from liquid millionaire to losing everything overnight, why it's so important to address your mental health while playing the game of entrepreneurship, the entrepreneur's gift and secret curse, how to remove your psychological blocks and unleash the beast, why you need to pick a lane, how clarity emerges through action, how to navigate the game with your emotional GPS, why self-condemnation is a waste of time, the online business owner's biggest problem, the 3 levels of business mastery, the 4 pillars of clarity, how to condense time and get to your goals faster, why you should focus on falling in love with the process, and of course, there's way more than that. But you'll have to listen to episode number 12, the online business and personal brand makeover master with Mike Young. Alrighty, folks, I'm super pumped for today's show. I have Mike Young with me, and Mike is the founder of themakeovermaster.com. He's the founder at the Association of Mental Health and Wellbeing for Entrepreneurs. He's the author of the book Makeover, How to Create a Powerful Brand That Will Transform Your Business and Save Your Life. And Mike is also the host of not just one, but 2 different successful podcasts. The first being the Makeover Master podcast and Ask the Makeover Master podcast. So Mike, welcome to the show.
Cody, thanks for having me, man. It's good to be here.
Cool, man. Last time we had some technical difficulties, so I said a couple prayers over the weekend, and I hope today's show will go smooth as possible. And one of my hopes for today is that we get a chance to talk about gorillas, Xanax, branding, how to build a successful business online. And before we get into that, I'd love to give the listeners some context, and I'll also let them know what the gorillas and Xanax is about when we get there. But what led you to dedicating 15 years of your life? Now, that's not a short time. That is a long time. And also over $200,000 in courses, seminars, masterminds, and coaching to acquire legit business skills so people like me don't have to, or at least we can condense the time and shorten that learning curve and maybe decrease the expense. So like, what led you to that point?
I think we talked before we started recording, and it's just like, I think I was number one, I was stubborn. Number two, I was in enough pain from a previous business. I grew a mortgage company from scratch to over 250 employees and 10 offices. That collapsed in 2007, 2008, when we kind of had the financial housing market meltdown in the US. Mm-hmm. And that was a painful experience for me. That was one of those moments where I went from liquid millionaire to a couple $100,000 in debt in less than 6 months. I
Wow.
lost all my houses, my assets, my cars, everything. And I just, I was getting like 400 emails a day. I was spending 12 to 14 hours at the office. And then to have it collapse on me, I just said, I'm never going back to that again.
Mm-hmm.
And I did what I think a lot of entrepreneurs do. I had a vision of, man, wouldn't it be cool to do something you love to do, work from anywhere, anytime, anywhere in the world, get paid to do it. And so I had this cool vision. I thought it was going to be actually easy for me to figure that out
Mm-hmm.
because in my mind, running a couple hundred employees, getting 400 emails a day was as complex as it was going to get. And and I was far from the truth that it was going to be quick and easy. It took me a long time to
Mm-hmm.
figure out how to rebuild kind of my own version of the entrepreneurial dream, even though I still only have a small team today. It took me a long time to figure out, how to put it all together, how to put all these moving pieces together, because it's a wildly complex game that we're all trying to play if you're trying to be an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like those credits didn't transfer over to the online business world.
Well, I would say they did. Everything seemed to transfer, but
Okay.
it was different, and it was also, I didn't realize at the time, but if you have some psychological issues, which I did, it was kind of like getting my whole identity stripped away.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a long time to really sort out the noise between my ears,
Mm.
which is why I started the Association for Mental Health for Entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Was it was 8.5 years, a couple hundred grand, before I recognized that the problem was actually in between my ears that needed to be resolved first before the business would ever work.
Mm.
And I was lucky enough to run into a couple mentors and people that I trust that helped me uncover that and then help me move past that stage.
So do you feel like you started with more of the inside job and that's what allowed maybe some breakthroughs in terms of maybe the technical stuff online?
Yeah, that was the frustrating part because I felt like I was banging my head against the wall. I had a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom when it comes to how everything worked, but
Mm-hmm.
yet my business was still failing.
Mm.
And I see that all the time with clients, that I run into today. A lot of them come to me for marketing or branding or strategy advice.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times it's something going on with them personally that
Yeah.
needs to get sorted first. It's like, it's like there's maybe a cap on the bottle holding everything in, and
Mm.
once you kind of sort that out, you can kind of unleash the beast, so to speak. And that
Yeah.
was definitely the case for me. It took me a long time to kind of really figure out what was going on and why I wasn't able to convert all this knowledge into actual income and have the business be thriving. And it was because I had other priorities I had to fix first.
Mm-hmm. So what was that like? I mean, you put a lot of time and energy and probably money and resources
Mhm.
into that business. And like you said, it was big. It sounds like
Yeah.
really big to me. I mean, I'm coming off of owning a gym for 8 years, only had a couple coaches, it wasn't huge. And then I also was a coach for 15 years. Like that's when the whole journey began. And it wasn't like I just got rich quick in that either, but I
Yeah.
did put so much time and energy into that craft and then transferring it to other people. And then I closed that business down in 2019. So I've been on like this 2 year period it feels like purgatory. So I think that's why I relate and connect with you. The dark night of the soul, like I've been going through that. It literally felt like a death. Like the only other big bottoms I think I hit was one, I got sober when I was 23 because I was a drug addict and on alcohol and partying and all of that. But then also heartbreak, I felt like was a similar experience. But then this was the first financial and business bottom that I ever felt. And when I read your copy or I look at your posts or I just see anything that you put out or you make YouTube videos, podcasts, I just identify on such a deep level in entrepreneurial mental health has
Mm.
become a really important thing to me. And I don't quite know how that works or always how to deal with it. I just know I had to start opening up to other people about what was going on in my life and get completely honest with myself and get completely honest with them and just let it all out and let it all go, as ugly as it might have seemed or as horrible as it felt. So, like, what was that experience when you went through that period of putting so much into that business
Mm.
to now it's, I don't know if you call it pivot, like that's the term people use now. Is it pivot? Is it reinventing yourself, starting over? Because I feel like I'm in that place right now and I've been here for 2 years.
Yeah, I think it was filled in the beginning, it was filled with a lot of excitement and optimism. A lot of entrepreneurs, including myself, were an open personality type, which means we are able to see opportunities everywhere.
Mm,
But that also, it's a blessing and a curse, because when you see opportunities everywhere, sometimes it's hard to pick a lane, and sometimes it's hard to kind of say
mm,
that's the thing. So in the beginning, it was exciting, but it became a drug, just like you mentioned, alcohol and drugs and everything else.
mhm,
The courses and the seminars and the events were actually semi an illusion that I was making progress towards something. That was my drug of choice. Instead of doing
mhm.
heroin or meth or
Yeah,
something like that, I
yeah.
was I was buying books and taking courses, because if I was doing that, I was clearly making progress towards building a real business. But like I said, partially that's an illusion, because just because it's kind of David Hume's problem, which is just because you have a lot of knowledge doesn't necessarily mean you know what to do with it, or how to put it all together and convert that knowledge into an actual running business.
Mm,
And that was definitely the case for me. So it became, I think I realized around 2015, like I'm actually this learning phase that I'm going through is actually it's a masking technique. It was me hiding from the truth. And you mentioned telling yourself the truth.
mhm,
If you really pay attention to what you say, almost all human beings are like this, which is we lie to ourselves constantly. And when you really start paying attention to, am I actually telling the truth here? It's hard to recognize how much we lie to ourselves.
mhm,
But I was telling myself one story, which is I'm making progress towards my business, but yet my business wasn't even a business at that point. It was a hobby. It
mhm,
was a full-time hobby that I was working really hard at, but I was never able to kind of pick that lane until I had somebody. Lucky enough, I ran into a friend and a mentor of mine, Mitch Miller.
mm,
And he was the first one that kind of gave me a good harsh slap across the face and said, "What are you doing here?" And I always respect that. That's what I do with my clients, is I tell them the truth,
mhm.
even if it's painful and it stings, because I want the very best for them.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's something that you're not able to see on your own with your own perspective. You need that outside perspective of somebody that can come in and say, "Hey, you're actually lying to yourself here, and here's what we can do about it to fix it."
Mm, hmm. Yeah, I think I found, actually it was in one of my questions for today doing my research. Is that who sat you down and said you need to pick a lane and figure out what the fuck you do or what the fuck you're doing, something like that?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Well, Mitch was one of those guys. I
Uh-huh.
also ran into at the same time a guy named Clay Moffitt, who is, I call him a mindset wizard, but he's a
Mm,
mindset conditioning coach that combines, hypnosis and NLP and several different modalities. And I was lucky enough to run into them at the same time. I was in enough pain that I was like, I'm fixing this. I got an opportunity to go meet those guys at an event over in Phuket. So I flew 9,000 miles. I transferred
oh
all my
my
money
God.
from 4 different checking accounts into one account just to afford the flight and the hotel at the time.
Oh my
And
God.
I sat down, and one of the gals at this event said, "There's something you got to sort out psychologically first." She introduced me to Clay the next day, and the combination of those two guys really helped me speed up my own learning curve on what the real problem was, and it had nothing to do with my business.
Wow. That's an incredible story. And I feel like I'm getting my ass kicked, and I would love some feedback from the cosmos or from somebody out there just to be like, this is what's going on, man. You need to address this, because I feel like there has been quite a bit I've had to look at within myself. And I still feel like I'm lacking in clarity because I'm starting over, like I mentioned. And that's where this kind of podcast has morphed out of or come from. And so I've also heard you speak to that quite a bit, which is clarity and figuring out. I think the question you mentioned, if I can get this right, it's down deeper in my notes as well, but you were talking about figuring out and asking myself the question, what do I want? Now, is that extremely important to like nail down first, or like, how do you even get to that place? And then there are, like you said, as an entrepreneur, so many things out there, and our minds, I think, are really fast, and they shoot off in all these directions with big ideas after one after another. So
Yeah.
like, how do you solve that riddle?
Yeah, I mean, the frustrating part of this game is that clarity emerges through action. And so in the beginning, you do have to sit down and just say, what do I want and why do I want it? And it's really tough to figure out in the beginning because you don't have enough market feedback. You need a positive feedback loop so that you take action. You kind of watch your emotions, really, is what you do. Is positive emotions are telling you that you're going in a direction that's in alignment with you, that feels good. Negative emotion tells you that you're off course in some way. And you have to kind of navigate. I always tell people in the beginning, it's like walking into an ice cream store and you've never tried ice cream before, and you gotta kind of try all 31
Oh
flavors
my
just to
God.
see which one you like.
Wow.
And there's going to be some forms of ice cream that you love, and there's going to be some that you hate, and that's okay. I think I made it worse because every time I tried something and it didn't work, I would also beat myself up over it. I
Yeah.
was very critical and harsh on myself, and there's no reason to do that. In the beginning, it doesn't matter if you're riding a bike, if you're coaching people in fitness, if you're starting a new business, doesn't matter what it is, you're going to suck in the beginning. You need to take action, learn the things that you'd learn, because if it works, it means that it worked. If it doesn't work, it's another form of telling you, hey, that doesn't work. You're still learning in that process.
Mm.
The way to speed it up is to get clear on what you think that you want, and then find somebody that's already done it, and really surround yourself with them. Hire them as a coach and as a mentor. I remember in the beginning, I was broke, at the time, and so the first thing I did is I filled my news feed on Facebook with only people that had already done what I was trying to do. So I was following, Gary Vee and Russell Brunson and Tony Robbins. And so that's all I saw on my social media. I didn't see friends. I didn't see family. I saw people that had already done what I was trying to do, because I couldn't afford to hire them yet directly. And so I had to make enough progress. And then I started buying their books and buying their courses. And then I made more progress, and I started showing up to events they were running. And I started to surround myself and really immerse myself in the process itself. And that's when things started to speed up, is when I think one of the things, we talked about lying to yourself, is you say you're committed, but are you actually committed? And when you look at your day, and you say, well, I spent 3 hours on my phone and 2 hours on Netflix, and you start to really analyze what's going on. And most people aren't going after it with their full heart. And that's one of the illusions I like to break down for clients, is that they say, hey, I'm really going after this thing, I really care about it. And then you find out how much time they're actually wasting during the day, and it's like they're lying to themselves. And so there's no need to beat themselves up over it. It's just, I want them to recognize the truth as early on as possible in the process.
Well, I definitely, let's say, suffer from beating myself up, self-condemnation. That is a part of my personality that I'm aware of. And I do my best to just like surrender to it, just be aware of it, see it, connect with other people, talk about it. And then there's also like this patience factor, because
Yeah.
like you're talking about, the clarity comes through action, and I've been taking action, and a lot of the action I've taken has led down dead end roads.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this thing with this person and try this out. Next thing you know, it's like, no, door is closed. This is not for me. I'm not doing that. Or it's the wrong culture, wrong people
Yeah.
to vibe with or be around. And so is that the feedback that you're talking about getting?
Yeah, it is a pretty simple game at the end of the day. Is like, get clear on, where you're starting from, get clear on where you want to go, take action towards it, and keep eliminating things that aren't working for you, and keep automating and systematizing things that need to be there that you don't want to do yourself. And eventually you'll get there if you're committed enough. I think I was lucky, man. Like I spent 23 years of my life thinking I was going to be a pro baseball player, and that game is filled with failure. And so it's the same thing as striking out at the plate. and then beating yourself up for the next 3 innings, and then you drop the fly ball in the outfield because you're still reliving the past. And that whole game of beating yourself up is just one big fat waste of time. It's you try things, you say that didn't work, but there's this little part of it that kind of works, so I'm going to try that again, but I'm going to ditch the rest. And how quickly, I think the thing that costs the most time, energy, effort, money, are the moments of stagnation and the moments where you're not moving towards what you value most, and beating yourself up, reliving the past, thinking about the future. Those are all illusions. And so you have to stay in the present moment. And so I try and snap myself back into reality as quickly as possible and say, okay, is this serving me in any way right now? Like, yes, I made a mistake. Yes, I screwed up that deal. Yes, I did this or whatever. But is continuing to think about it and beat myself up over it serving me in any way? And the answer was no. And then we talked about this in another conversation before we were recording, but the game's incredibly tough. The problem, like, at least when I played baseball, I knew that people struck out. I knew that people made errors. I was seeing it on TV. Even the Major League Baseball players were making errors all the time. Well, you walk into the entrepreneurial game and everybody's showing their highlight reel online. So you walk into this illusion where you think everybody's making it and you're the only one. Like, you're the only one dumb enough that can't figure this game out. Everybody else is wildly successful in this game, and that's all a lie. It's actually the opposite. Everybody's kind of faking it online, so it's like this, it's Price's law, or Pareto's principle. It's like there's always this top 1% or top 20% that's kind of making it. The rest of the industry is struggling just like you are. And so if you can walk into the reality of it, that helps you psychologically not beat yourself up, because I think it was eye-opening to me the first time I realized, like, 95+% of all marketing fails the first time you try it. Even very good copywriters, very, very talented people who know what they're doing, they're making their best guess and they're course correcting until they figure it out. And so not only that, this is a long-winded answer, but it's kind of like two Rubik's cubes, and we talked about that last time as well. It's like you're trying to get all your sides to line up, and then the entrepreneurial world is the market. Like, there's technology, there's Facebook, there's Instagram, and that's always shifting too, and they're trying to line up their colors into the market, and you're trying to get both the Rubik's cubes to line up onto red so that you can match them. Well, those don't stay matched for very long, because either you grow and develop as an entrepreneur, and so your thoughts and what's important to you changes over time, or the marketplace, as soon as you have it figured out, Facebook changes a rule on ads, or Instagram makes a change, or the platform kicks you off altogether. And so it's very, very difficult to get those two things to line up. And I think if you're going in with a sense of reality, like, it gives you a sense of calm and peace, because it's like, hey, I know 96% of what I'm going to try, I'm going to fail at. And that's very different than walking into the game thinking that everybody's making a killing.
Yeah, no, that is wild. Even some of the best copywriters have that 95%, like, this campaign or whatever isn't going to work out, maybe. Like,
I think that's what we all know behind the scenes. It's like, hey, we're going to make our best guess, but the reality is that the market is your ultimate judge, your ultimate mentor, and it's going to tell you, yes, you're right, or no, you're not right, and you got some work to do. And there are shortcuts to this game. There are ways to give yourself the best fighting chance, so to speak. But no matter what you do, you've still got to face the market. You've got to face, like, is my idea good enough and my offer good enough? Is it going to work? The only way to find out is to put it out there.
Okay. Now, you also mentioned, or at least the word mentor came up, or allow the market to be the mentor. And I also have heard a little bit of confusion is out there, and it sounds noisy, and that's my experience. And I know that experience is for many other people, especially if you're just starting out or you're starting over. Like, for me, it's extremely noisy. I don't know really anybody in the online business, because I'm coming out of more of a brick and mortar, let's say, network or community of people. And so here I am stepping into the online business world, right?
Mhm.
And I'd love to actually go back into this, the 9 to 5. Like I've had to get a 9 to 5, which we'll get there. But as far as mentorship, I feel like it's been very difficult to find, and I'll just put a title or a name on it, the real ones.
Mm,
Because you're talking about the highlight reels, and I feel like it's not just the highlight reels that are deceiving or are an illusion, but it's also like I'm legit looking for help. Like
yeah,
I really am like, who out there is a real one? Because obviously there's guru this, guru that, guru
yeah.
this, guru that. They're everywhere, and there's a million of them. And it's like, how do I sift through that to find the real one? Like, who is somebody who's gone through 15 years of testing things out and figuring it out for themselves, and as we've talked about, gone through this, solved this problem for themselves, like really have done it. And also they've gone through paying all kinds of money, like you said, traveling to Phuket. Like, who are the real ones? How do we find the real ones and cut through that
Yeah,
noise?
I mean, I think part of it is the real ones will tell you the truth, even when like a lot of times we don't know the answer, right? And so like it seems like a lot of people want to have every answer to everything, and they're always trying to give you their answer and their take. But the answer sometimes is I don't know. We have to try it. We have to find out. We have to do those things. But I think it's important that you find a real one for you
Mm,
because it has to be in alignment with you. You have to feel good about the relationship. You have to enjoy hanging out with that person. And they don't have to be necessarily light years ahead of you. Like for me, I remember I was thinking about getting into Russell Brunson's inner circle at one
mm,
point,
mm,
but he was so far ahead of me based on where I was at the time. It wouldn't have been a good mentor for me because
mm,
I had other steps I needed to take first. I had more progression, both personally and professionally, that I had to go through first. He
mm,
was too far ahead in the game. And so I think unfortunately the simple answer is you got to you got to run into lots of people. The podcast is a great way to do that.
mm,
You bring in people and you kind of feel like, hey, I feel like this person's legit, and I feel like we have a good conversation together. It feels like they're in alignment. They're willing to help me.
mm,
And sometimes in the beginning, especially if you're having, like, if you don't have a fully functioning business yet and your cash flow is not rocking, you got to kind of take bits and pieces of what you can get, unless you have the dough to kind of say, I'm going to hire you.
yeah.
And that was definitely the case for me. It was a combination of books, courses, events, and I tried to start every relationship off on the right foot.
Yeah.
When I would meet somebody, I'd say, hey, it's nice to meet you. I wasn't trying to get all the answers overnight. I was just trying to develop a relationship with people.
Mm,
And that is the answer, actually, because if you think about it, all entrepreneurial problems have been solved before by somebody else. And so your answers are in your network, because you're one phone call away from a million people and you're two phone calls away from a billion, which
mm,
means that's why it goes back to what we talked about earlier, is if you're clear on what you want and you're clear on what your next need is, all you have to do is ask your network for help and have the
mm,
courage to just say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I think we've all had those moments. Like, I'm looking for a 1969 Camaro hubcap. Like, I'm very
mm,
specific in my need.
mhm,
And within a couple of phone calls, you found your answer.
mhm.
But most people are very vague in what they're asking for. And so they don't get the specific answers because they need to ask specific questions. So if you can get clear on what you want and what your next need is and ask your network, within a couple of phone calls, you'll find the person you need.
Wow, that's good. I haven't heard it in that context. A couple pieces there. Even that time thing when you're talking about Russell Brunson was so far out,
Mm.
right? And you just were like, that might be a bit of a stretch.
Yeah,
Wow.
I would have been lost. I would have been in the inner circle, paid the money, and the conversations were ten steps beyond what I could comprehend at the time.
Mm,
And not that it wouldn't have worked out. It's just like you got to kind of try some stuff. You're going to make mistakes. You've got to get to the place where you're comfortable not giving a shit what anybody thinks, not caring, saying I'm on a mission here, and then incorporate that into some sort of game in your head.
Mm.
In my life right now, like the whole thing's a game. How much time do I spend with my wife and my kids and the finances and the business and my clients? Like the whole thing is kind of one big game that I'm trying to always tweak and adjust and make it a better version of itself. And that's what I feel like today. Like it gives me a sense of calm, which
Mm.
is I'm not trying to take over the world tomorrow. I'm trying to
Mhm.
get 1% better than I was yesterday.
Mm.
And if you continue on that path for long enough, you'll do some amazing things in this life.
So you're talking about like different aspects of life, and each of those takes time. Now,
Mhm.
during this 15-year period where you've been out there getting tons of experience and acquiring the skill sets, it sounds like, did you have to, once the finances went upside down with that first big business, did you have to get a job in order to like fund this new direction, or were you able to, maybe borrow some money or scrape up some money and be able to start investing in your education or yourself or courses
Yeah.
like we're talking about?
Yeah, I did get this is back in maybe 2009, 2010. I got a consulting gig, which was essentially a job.
Mm-hmm.
I lasted like 6 weeks. They asked me to like wear a collared shirt into the office, and I was like, screw
Yeah.
this. It's
Yeah.
not for me. Which is like
Yeah, dude, I get that one.
that just tells you how I guess jaded I was from the whole suit and tie phase of my life.
There you go.
Um, and I was lucky enough. I had a business partner from 2010 to 2014. He loved networking and sales. I loved figuring out all the stuff behind the scenes. So
Mm.
we're making decent money during those few years, and I was just taking all the money and pouring it back into my self education. And so that's where the 200 grand came from. I was actually making pretty good money, but I was behind the scenes. Nobody really knew who I was. He was the
Mm.
face of the business. I was behind the scenes support guy.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother-in-law in 2015 ended up taking his own life. And that was a
Mm.
big moment for
Wow.
me. Like that was a big wake up call to realize like, hey, you got one life. It's time to stop hiding behind the scenes. Time to put yourself back out there. I had all the knowledge at that point to make something work. But I just got tired of the hiding, I guess, is the way I
Wow.
would describe it.
Okay, so you did have a sort of a partnership going on, and one of the partners was focusing on this half of, say, the business, and you were focusing on the other half.
Yeah, and I would say I don't think I would recommend going the route I did for a long time, which is kind of not having that security net or that safety blanket. There
Mm-hmm.
was there were many years that I didn't have anything and I was too stubborn to quit, but it made like cash flow is oxygen, to your life, to your business and everything else. So when
Mm-hmm.
you run out, it becomes incredibly difficult to make rational decisions
Brutal.
because you're in a mental state that is essentially fight or flight mode at that point.
Yeah.
And so I would say, and the statistics are overwhelming. The majority of entrepreneurs fail. It's a
Mm-hmm.
very difficult game. I would say it's probably more appropriate for most people to have some sort of a job and some sort of a safety net while they're building their dream on the side.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the route I took. I was kind of all in, and although that few years was I had consistent income and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
When I went out on my own, there was an incredibly difficult 2 year period where I had the sleepless nights. I had the moments where I was questioning whether I was good enough or smart enough. What was wrong with me? What am I missing? All those sleepless night
Yeah.
conversations that you have.
Mm.
And at the end of the day, I was lucky enough to run into the right circle of people for me. You
Mm-hmm.
know.
Wow. Yeah, I call that the unmanageable thought life, those sleepless nights, or even like walking through life with just that going on and the inability to just focus on simple tasks and move in a direction that could probably positively impact me.
Well, I
Um,
think you mentioned in the intro, you mentioned gorillas and Xanax. It's
yeah.
at the end of the day, there's a vibe and an energy that we all put off.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to hang out with Debbie Downer,
Yeah.
and people that are complaining about life that aren't going anywhere in their life. That was really me for a long time, and I didn't recognize it. And they did this experiment where they literally gave this one gorilla who was not the alpha in the group, they gave him Xanax. And inside of about 2 days of taking Xanax, he became the alpha in the group. And it's just goes to show you, if you can kick off enough dopamine or serotonin in your brain, people begin to gravitate towards you. They can, I mean, I think, Cody, you can feel it when somebody has their act together, they're going somewhere and you're like, man, I don't know what it is about that guy or that girl, but I like being around them. And so you've got to sort that stuff first. You've got to get your energy and your mojo right. Because at the end of the day, that's all sales is too. Sales is mostly attitude and mojo. You can, if you show up properly, you're going to have a lot of success in this game. Even if you butcher the sales call with the right mojo, the right attitude, the right vibe, you're going to sell a heck of a lot of product.
Yeah, that's, speaking of sales, that's right where I'm at. And that's what I've got involved with, because I was willing to stay in debt and not pay the IRS when I closed the gym down. And then I sold all my equipment, had a little money, and I was like, we're going on a road trip and we're going to move out of the city and we're going to go live in the mountains. And so that's what we did. Now that's taken us 2 years, and now we have a beautiful log home in Idaho. But I had to go out and just decompress for a little while. But that decompressing and not working started to kind of eat me alive. And like you were saying, it started to affect me in my decision making. And so I was talking to, I guess you could say, a mentor of mine, and he's like, you just got to get back into earning. Just get back into earning. And also he was saying, get back into being of service, because you're self-centered, you're wrapped up in yourself, you're only thinking of how little money you have, the money's running out, you still owe the IRS, you're thinking, and it's just you. And I think what I've experienced is the Xanax in the gorilla. Like, I'm the gorilla. Now, I didn't take Xanax, but I've had that experience where I even called up an old client of mine. He used to have a facility in LA taking care of like aggressive dogs. And I was like, I know you were a client of mine, but we're homies and we're friends and stuff. I'd love to just come help you. Minimum wage, not asking for anything. And I had an amazing experience, and it flipped this switch. And then I was like, okay, this isn't going to fit for me moving forward as far as sustainability, because I got out of the gym world as well, because I don't want to keep using my body. I want to use my creativity and my mind. And then that led me into, okay, well, let's go business. Let's go into the business world deeper. Sales, marketing, these key pillars or elements. And so now I've walked into the world of high ticket sales, but I'm working for business owners in the online business space, and I'm conducting sales, and there's structure in that. And because of that structure, I'm getting inspired to learn how to be a better collaborator, be a better communicator. And like you're saying, my mojo has increased. And then that inspired me to do something like this, which was take a risk and do something on the side, start a podcast, start meeting other like-minded individuals. And like you mentioned, see if you vibe. And now I've been putting in that footwork, and it has not been easy. It's been very humbling, but I'm starting to little bit by little bit feel that not just that switch was shifted, but it's growing, and it's this
Well, I
thing
think
inside.
you touched on such an important point, because that is literally the shift, is to when we're all organisms, so when things are not working or we feel threatened, we become, we either freeze, we fight, or we flight, so it's like we become very reactionary, and we turn our brains inward because we're trying to survive. We literally are in a moment where our body's telling us you might die here. And the shift is shifting all your focus outward because I think it's important to remember that all money comes from other people's bank accounts into your bank account for an exchange in value. And so if that's true, and all business opportunities come through other people, it means you've got to connect with a whole lot of people to see which relationships are right. And sometimes you're holding on to something so hard, like that's how you catch a monkey. It's like you get him to wrap his hand around a banana, put it in a jar, and he won't let the banana go. He can't get his hand out of the jar. And sometimes you just have to let go of those old patterns, behaviors, thought processes, and all those things. You just have to let go and kind of have some trust and allow things to develop a little bit. And what you're going to find is you're going to find opportunities are everywhere, and they're endless, but they all come through other people. So if things aren't working, we do the opposite. We tend to retreat. We tend to isolate. We tend to become self-loathing and very critical of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And the higher you set your aims, the more that you set this bar, so to speak, that's judging you all the time. So one of the things I tell clients to do is if they come to me and they say, hey, I'm going to get on Oprah, I'm going to meet Tom Cruise, I'm going to, these big, huge pie in the sky dreams, I'm going to have $1 million a month residual,
Mm-hmm.
is that you just got to realize you're setting up an extremely harsh judge for yourself, because soon as you don't make progress towards that, you get very harsh on yourself. It's why New Year's resolutions don't work.
Mm-hmm.
You say, I'm going to drop 50 pounds this year. You get to January 6th, you haven't made progress. You don't like that feeling of not making progress towards a valued aim. And so you quit. And so I just say, like, lower the dang bar, like if you've set up these huge dreams, that's okay. You still got to take step one. And sometimes you've got to, the other thing that I this took me a long time to learn, you've got to recognize and reward yourself for progress. And it doesn't matter how small it is. Like if I do something and I automate one little piece that was currently taking me 5 minutes, like I try and just recognize that I did it, and I give myself a pat on the back. I go out, maybe I buy a nice dinner for myself or whatever. But that recognition and reward is kicking off dopamine and serotonin into your brain. It's making your energy go up. When you're not making progress towards something that you say you want to go towards, it's doing the opposite, and your body's just getting filled with cortisol, and you feel like crap, and you can't figure out why your neck and your shoulders hurt all the time. And that's really the game. It's making incremental progress towards something that you value, and then having a really emotional, why am I doing this? And like, what's that giving you? It's like, okay, I want my business to be on autopilot, and just keep asking yourself why until you get down to the root of why you're actually doing that. And if you've got some emotion behind it, I guarantee you'll get there.
Yeah, I still haven't sat down, I don't think, and got clear enough even on like the why. I just had to launch myself into action, but I can feel like that's in the horizon, so to speak. I know that day is coming, and I just feel like also what you mentioned, the clarity again comes through the action. I think that's how you said it. I feel like I keep getting just a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit there, and maybe that's what will add up to where it's like an epiphany. I don't know, just like boom.
I
Okay.
think like I had two whys. Like one, I recognized early on, but I realized that I listened to this interview with the Dalai Lama, and somebody had asked him, if I want my kids to do something, what should I tell them? And the Dalai Lama said, it doesn't matter what you tell them, it only matters what you do, because your kids are going to model your behavior. And so early on in the game, I realized like my kids are going to see me going after kind of my entrepreneurial dream, and they're only going to have a binary judge for me. He made it or he quit. That's the only thing they're going to see. So the story I told myself was, the reason I'm doing this is I want my kids to see what it looks like to really go after your dreams and not give up. That was emotional for me, but it developed over, it's kind of like happenstance, it was random to listen to that interview and then to maybe think about it. And who knows, maybe I smoked weed or something. I don't even know. But like, I just really thought about, why am I doing this and why does it matter? And when you can attach something like to your kids like that, where I'm letting my kids down, like that's so emotional, that's what got me through the dark times. My brother-in-law taking his own life made me realize like that there are people in this game that were 3 feet from gold, or about to give up, or maybe even about to give up on life. Like every time I go to speak at an event or anything like that, sometimes I don't want to go. I don't want to get out of bed just like everybody else. But I'm like, somebody in this room is maybe 3 feet from giving up on something that they're so close to, or maybe they're about to give up on life and they're frustrated. Just like in 2015, I was so frustrated, before I flew over to Thailand. It was, so I keep those things in mind, and those are the things that get you through the dark times, if you've got some real emotion behind why you're doing what the hell you're doing.
Okay. Now I'd like to dig a little deeper into like the problem, because as I was, well, actually, let me frame this a little different. One of the first posts that like hit me, and it felt like a ton of bricks just landed on my head when I was going through your Instagram, and we've touched on it, I think, a little bit, but maybe you can go deeper on this, is the post about the vice. And you had this graphic. I wish I could just bring the graphic up right now for anybody who's going to watch this visually on like YouTube. But anyway, the graphic was rad, and I started to read each of those bits of the vice. And I think on your website you mentioned that the vice is like the biggest problem that online business owners face. And this quote I grabbed was, "The vice is what keeps you in the same place, month after month, year after year. The vice can keep you trapped, and before you know it, your physical health and mental well-being is through the floor." And reading that, I'm like, damn, that's my exact experience towards like the last 1 or 2 years of an 8-year stretch owning a brick and mortar. And I'd also say, on top of the physical health and the mental health going through the floor, my finances started going upside down.
Yeah.
So could you maybe take us through? I know there was like 5 stages in the vice. Could you maybe describe or walk us
Yeah,
through?
man, it's the vice was just this trap that a lot of people fall into. You don't really kind of know what you're doing in the beginning, and
Mm-hmm.
you need to put food on the table and keep a roof over your head, so you got to sell some stuff. And that's kind of stage one. You kind of hustle it out online. You're making phone calls, you're connecting with your network, you're doing posting organically, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You drum up a little bit of cash flow, but then if you're in a service-based business like I was, we were delivering websites and strategy advice and all these things, then you have to shift your focus to your clients and actually deliver on your promises. Well, as soon as you do that, when you're early in the game, your marketing and your advertising stops
Mm-hmm.
because you're just focused on delivering what you promised to your clients. You got a little bit of cash flow. You start taking that cash flow and you start thinking, I don't want to go back to that hustle marketing, calling people, cold calling, direct messaging people. I don't want to do that again. So I'm going to take my cash flow and I'm going to learn something new. I'm either going to find a strategy, a tool, or a tactic that can get me out of that hustle phase.
Mm-hmm.
So then you start digging into the new thing that you're going to learn that gets you out of the hustle phase. And it's like your month starts creeping up on you. And then you start feeling the squeeze a little bit. You kind of start seeing the writing on the wall that, hey, in 20 days, I need to pay rent again,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
and you don't have enough knowledge, or you haven't learned the tool or the strategy or the tactic enough yet to be able to apply it to your business. And then you kind of really start feeling the pinch. It's the end of the month, you need rent to be due, and or your rent is due and you need to pay it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you find yourself back in that hustle phase. And so you repeat that cycle over and over again. The answer to escape it is really understanding what the foundations of business are, understanding how to build credibility, authority, positioning, copy and offer, your process and your flow, your closing ability on the phone. If you've got to close sales on the phone, if
Mm-hmm.
you understand and can put those foundations together, and then you can also find somebody that's already done what you're trying to do, that's the answer to escaping the vice. Is there's just so many unanswered questions when it comes to running a business,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to balance that relationships along with delivering your offers, along with learning new stuff. And it's incredibly difficult to figure out on your own, if not impossible.
And when we started today's conversation, when you were talking about it started with you, is that the beginnings of the foundation? Because I also saw a post of yours about the 3 levels of business mastery. There was the personal resistance, the foundation, and then the strategies and the tools, which you alluded to, and the tactics. So is that what you have to like pin down before, or is that a part of the foundation?
Yeah, I would say it all kind of morphs together. And that's the thing, is like I talked earlier about, time with my wife or time with my kids, or maybe working out or whatever. Like that's why it all does kind of affect one another. You're going to have a tough time running a successful business if your health is through the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's a couple of things I would say. Number one is I have what I call the 4 clarity pillars. You have to understand yourself and what you want and why you want it. You have to understand who your ideal client is and what their problems are. You have to understand what products and services you deliver that solve their problems directly. And you have to understand how human beings work. Those are the 4. If you understand those 4 things very clearly, you're not going to have any problems with your business.
Wow.
But there's the mastery game. The part that's very difficult is that the industry tells you that this strategy, tool, or tactic is the quick and easy fix to your problems. And we believe it. We believe that's what we're bombarded with. That's all we see on the front end. Click funnels, ManyChat, all these strategies, tools, and tactics are telling you that it's the quick, easy answer. And then we believe it. But underneath that are the foundations. That's credibility, your copy and your offer, your process and your flow, your positioning, all those things on the foundations. If you have clarity on the 4 pillars, you have the strategies, tools, and tactics at hand, you have the foundations, you're showing proof and social proof that you're good at what you say you're good at, and your business still isn't working, that's when the personal resistance comes into play. That's when if you have all of that at your disposal, which I did in 2015, and it still wasn't working, it means there's something psychologically holding you back. There's a relationship holding you back. There's something personally that's holding you back. And there can be a million things. It can be a past trauma. It could, like for me, it was a past trauma. I lost my business, which at the time was my identity. So I had to sort through that. And it took me a heck of a long time to kind of do the inner work and tell myself the truth for a long enough period of time where over time, I stopped lying to myself.
Wow. There's so much in that. Oh my God, there's like a million ways to go. Um,
I think that's what I enjoy today is I've been able to kind of, it wasn't enough for me to figure it out how to get it to work for myself. I had to understand like the why, like why did this start to work? And then I figured out very simple ways to articulate it back to my clients. It's like, if you kind of understand the 3 levels, you understand the 4 clarity pillars, like it's simply a process of going deeper and deeper on those things until it clicks.
those clarity pillars sound amazing to me, actually, when you're saying it. I'm just like, oh my God. So it also sounds like, so there's like a roadmap and then there's the individual, and it's that's how it maybe has to be customized, is to the individual. However, there is a roadmap, there is a direction that you can go. There is hope.
I
All
would
hope
say
is not
that's
lost.
100% accurate. There's a framework. There's a rough roadmap that's like, I'm going from Oregon to Florida and I know I got to go east, but you don't see every turn right away. You don't see every town that you're going to encounter. You don't know how you're going to feel in different locations yet. And so I always tell clients, it's like an obstacle course where you can see the cones. But you can only see like the next 3 cones. The rest of the cones are behind a brick wall and they're moving. The market's moving, the industry's moving. You don't know how you're solving the first 3 cones. You may change your direction. You may change your vision. You may be a different human being after you solve 100 cones. And so it's like, it's always adjusting. It's always course correcting, and you've got to get things in alignment with who you are. And that's one thing I would tell people in the beginning is like, what's given you energy your whole life? Like when you were a kid, what did you enjoy doing? Were you the type of scientific kid that enjoyed tinkering with things, or did you like stability and you like this little calm like atmosphere? Like that's kind of, it's the alignment thing is more of an unlayering process than it is like discovering yourself. It's more like it's always been in there. It's always been with you from the start, but society, your community, your environment, it layers on all these pre-existing conditions, so to speak, that like, oh, you should go to high school, you should go to college, you should get a job, you should get married, and then all of a sudden you're going to be happy. Well, I did all that and I wasn't happy. and I couldn't figure out why. And it was because things weren't in alignment with who I was. If you understand how you're naturally wired from the beginning, you're going to have a lot more success. The reality is there are some people in this world that are not wired for the entrepreneurial game. They're wired to be an accountant. They're wired to be an attorney. They're wired differently. Entrepreneurs are creative types, and being a creative type that sees all the opportunities, you have to pick your lane. You have to kind of decide and stay the course and make minor course corrections until you figure it out for yourself.
Okay, so we're talking about the course correction, and there is, like you mentioned, this rough framework, and then there's the individual. Is this also where the guide can step in? And I think one of the things I really like that you said was I can help you take the 15 years and do what I did in 15 in 1 year.
Yeah.
Now, is that what makes that possible? Having a guide step in and help you with the framework?
It's the speed thing. In the beginning, like if I didn't know how to do something, maybe I spend 2 or 3 hours on Google to find out, like, okay, maybe it's one of these three or four solutions. And then I'd have to try the solution, and then I'd have to go through that. So maybe it takes me 8 days to get an answer. And a lot of times, if you have a mentor or a guide that's already done what you're trying to do, you're getting that answer in 8 seconds, not 8 days. And so it was the time. It's a speed thing is what it is. It's like, here's what I'm struggling with, here's what I'm thinking. And a lot of times a mentor or a guide will have your answer instantaneously. Like they know how you feel. Like I know how my clients feel. I'm like, oh, I remember that feeling. I remember the feeling of raising my prices. That's like the first thing I usually recommend people do, because the instinct is to lower your prices, start discounting services.
Yeah.
That gives off this desperate, needy vibe to your business. And so one of the first things is increasing your prices. And well, you're going to feel very uncomfortable when your business isn't working and somebody's telling you to increase your prices. I remember screwing up my first sale after I'd closed the sale, because I'd raised my prices at the time to like $6,000.
Wow.
But I was like, I was the waiter that was like, hey, are you sure everything's okay? Are you really sure the steak's cooked okay? And it became so awkward for the client that she's like, I just want a refund. Because I still hadn't built my confidence and my comfort level to match up to the prices I was trying to charge. And so it's a process, to go through the game is to get, how quickly can you get answers, and how quickly can you get back into motion when you encounter obstacles that are knocking you off track.
Okay, that is great. So it's a speed thing. Now, skill sets, are there certain skill sets that you think, as far as speaking about like fundamentals, are there fundamental skill sets as far as what one needs to acquire to have a successful online business? Or is it just something that happens, but is there like pillars for that as well?
No, those are the foundations. I would say you have to understand authority and build authority. And by definition, not everybody in a niche can be an authority in the niche. It's like, I remember buying a house, and I used the realtor in town. I had like 10 realtors that were all friends. I didn't use any of them. I used the realtor in town that was known to get the best results. And so authority, positioning, how you're going to be position your business, your copy and your offer, you're showing credibility online. That's proof and social proof that you actually do what you say you do. Your process and your flow of how you gather leads and warm them up to get into a buying mood, and then your ability to close those leads that you're getting. And those are the foundations. The reason they're the foundations is they're not going to change in our lifetime. Like you always have to show proof and social proof that you do what you say you do. You always have to have a copy and an offer that resonates with your ideal clients. And there are frameworks to all of that. And that's the game, is like, can you find somebody that knows a heck of a lot more answers than you to speed up your learning curve?
Okay. So then you take that and apply that to what you're doing, and then you put it out in the market, and that's where like the market testing comes into play.
Pretty much. I would say the majority of the game, like, for example, if let's take John Mayer. You know John Mayer, the guitarist, you know, the singer-songwriter? No? Let's take somebody else.
I
Let's
grew up
take
on rap music
let's take
back in the
Michael
day.
Jordan. You know Michael Jordan?
Yeah. Okay. I think
Okay.
everybody should know that one.
Okay. So if Michael Jordan put out an online course to teach you how to shoot to make 100 out of 100 free throws, he's not going to have to do very much selling. He's Michael frickin' Jordan, and he's got all the proof and social proof in the world. Whereas if I put out the same exact course, the same exact thing, I'm going to show you how to make 100 out of 100 free throws. People are going to be like, who the heck are you? What's the proof that you've helped other people do this before? How much? They've got all sorts of questions. So I think the shortcut is actually doing what you say you do. I see so many business owners online that say, like, they have a cute tagline, like, I help 6-figure businesses become 7-figure businesses. And yet you look at their website, their social media, there's no proof, there's no social proof, there's no vibe that they actually even do that. They're taking selfies with their lunch, and they're, you know, it's just like the vibe's all off. And human beings learn through stories. You know, we learn through stories over time, and what we're looking for is, like, does this story make sense with this person? And that's why, you know, Amazon reviews, Google reviews are vitally important early in the game. And there are shortcuts to that, you know, like when I first went into strategy and coaching, I had proof of doing websites and logos and some branding stuff, but I didn't have proof of coaching. So I didn't want to wait 2 years to get 40 clients. So what I did was, my wife went out of town, and I said, I'm going to help 40 people this weekend for free. And I helped 40 people for free, and 37 of them were blown away. And I asked them all for a review at the end. So I got 37 reviews in a weekend. Wow. Because I just was willing to, like, help some people for free. But the reality was, I didn't have any proof at that time. So I could wait 2 years to gather it all, or I could do it in a weekend.
Wow. That's amazing. That's a rad strategy to apply. For anybody out there, that might be something you could take and use in your business or in your life and get it off the ground. Now I got a little bit of a selfish question. We'll wrap up here in a little bit. Yeah, and it's not just selfish, and it's not just about me, because I know the position in terms of what I'm going through right now. Again, starting over. If someone's starting over, or they're starting in a new direction, whether it's a career or entrepreneurship, what should someone, I would say entrepreneur with a side, let's just go trendy words, whatever, with a side hustle. I'd like to stay away from that stuff, but it is what it is. So what should somebody new, like whether they're starting a new podcast or a new brand or a blog or a YouTube channel, and that's one of the means in which they want to connect with people while they're doing their entrepreneurial pursuits, what should somebody be working on in, say, year one?
Primary thing that I have clients do in year one is, every time they do something to solve a problem for one of their clients, is to gather and display proof that they did it. So collecting reviews and as much social proof as you can. And even we talked about that, you know, you can help people for free. You can barter. Like, so I wasn't very comfortable with my speaking skills. And I had an event in Mexico that I was going to go speak at, that I was hired to speak at. So I found a TEDx speakers coach, and she just happened to have a terrible website. And so I just said, hey, could I build your website? How much do you charge for your TEDx speaking? They both happened to be 10 grand at the time. So we bartered. I got coached by her. I built her website. So there's some bartering that goes on. You have to build your skills. And in the beginning of anything new, you're going to kind of stink at it. And so what's the fastest way you can build skills? And every time you do good by somebody, gather that proof and that social proof, and make sure it gets displayed. People don't want to do that because they feel like they're maybe like, I don't want to seem like I'm gloating, you know, or I don't want to seem like I'm bragging online. But you just have to reframe that conversation and realize that the only reason people are going to buy from you, like if you go to Amazon, like today, first thing you're looking for is which one has the most 5-star reviews. So the conversation needs to be reframed that if I don't show proof, I'm not going to be able to help somebody with my skills and my talent. And for me, the reframe was that there's somebody out there that's maybe thinking about quitting on their business or even quitting on their life. So the story I told myself was, if I don't show all my proof and social proof online, it might cost somebody their life. And I know that's dramatic, but it worked. And you've got to reframe the conversation in your head to realize why this is so freaking important, because there's somebody out there that might give up on their business when they're so freaking close, or they might quit on their life when they're so freaking close. And it was my duty and my obligation to show that proof and social proof.
Wow, that is deep. That is going to a whole nother level. But it takes it out of just, oh, it's just a post, or oh, it's just a review, or oh, I can't do that. That just feels tacky, or it feels like I'm bragging.
Well, and again, like you mentioned this earlier, that was the shift for me when I shifted all my focus to my ideal clients. I knew who they were, I knew how they felt, I knew what they were going through. And when I was like, the conversation wasn't, what do I need? The conversation, it wasn't what do I need to get a sale? It was, what do I need to show so that my ideal clients get the help they need? It was all about them. It was never about me. I think that's why Amazon's so successful today. They have a culture that's built on perfecting the client experience. And so you've got to be able to shift your focus all to your ideal clients, and the game starts to change.
Okay. And now, as someone's building this new pursuit, where does the brand come into play? Right? Because like one of the big things I heard from Gary Vee early on was like personal brand.
Yeah.
It's the way we're going. So what is branding or personal brand, and like how does that come into play as you're doing what we're talking about in, say, year one?
Yeah, I would say your brand evolves over time, just like you do. And people massively overcomplicate branding, but the definition is literally the perception the marketplace has of you versus your perception of who you think you are and how you want to be perceived in the marketplace. When those two things match, you have a strong brand. So if you think I'm the best fitness professional in Idaho, and then you go ask 100 people and they say, who is Cody? And those two things don't match, you've got some work to do on your brand. But it's literally being, and this is going to sound cliche, but it's just being authentically you, and getting to a place where you accept yourself, where this is who I am. There are people that are going to resonate with my message. There's people that are not, and I'm okay with that. But if you can be consistent 24/7, 365, and just be yourself, and then help people along the way, like, your brand will be just fine. But people overcomplicate it. It's just like, you got to start somewhere. You might as well just kind of put up your best guess, start the process, and you got to kind of always, as quickly as possible, how do I fall in love with the process? Like, how do I fall in love with the fact that I'm going to always not know the answer? I'm going to have the courage to take the first step. I'm going to have to watch and monitor my emotions to know where to course correct. And I'm always going to be tweaking and adjusting. Richard Branson just went to space, like a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And he said, we've been working on this for 17 years. And as I was on the ship, I was writing down a list of things that I would do to improve this experience for the next person. And he said he wrote down 34 things. And so if a guy like that, 17 years into it, is still tweaking and adjusting to make the experience better for the next person, that's how, if you can fall in love with that process, you're going to have a lot more success.
That's incredible. And what's funny, and why I laughed when you said fall in love with the process, because that's my next question. I was like, if you're starting over, dude, like I feel like I don't have a process. Like I'm learning a process. I ain't never had a podcast in my life. I could call my brother. He has a successful one, and I have called him and talked to him, but I still got to do it. And I don't know what my process is. It seems to be different than his.
Yeah.
Right. So that was my question, which was like, I heard you talk about that and I was like, oh my God, like, how do you fall in love with the process when you're starting something new?
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it is recognizing you're going to fail. You're going to fail in the beginning. You're going to fail a lot, and being okay with it. Like, I think if you took something like playing Bach on the piano or something, you kind of realize like this is probably going to stink, if I've never played the piano before.
Mhm.
But for some reason, people are delusional in the entrepreneurs world, and they think, oh, well, I'm starting a podcast, this is going to be easy. You got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Mhm. Dude,
you
it's
know
been super uncomfortable. And that's why I wanted to go deeper into sales, because it's like I'm forced in a position where I have to speak and connect with people.
I
And
mean, that is the game, man. It's like it doesn't matter what you do. Like first time you travel internationally, the first time you drive a car, you're uncomfortable because you literally have not done it before. Your body wants to protect itself. It wants to keep you alive. It doesn't. So that's the other thing when I talked about the four clarity pillars, the understanding human beings thing, that's kind of like will set your business on fire when you really understand humans. But basically, we want to stay alive. We don't like being socially judged because that affects our ability to reproduce, which is
mm,
another version of us staying alive, is passing our genes on.
mhm.
And so when you understand that most human beings want to remain anonymous and invisible, and we
Mm,
don't want to be judged, we don't want to be critically judged.
yeah.
And yet we judge ourselves. We judge ourselves harshly and critical. And so we're weird creatures. And when you can kind of understand that you're weird and you're just trying to stay alive and you're trying to reproduce and get laid once in a while,
Yeah.
like the game starts to make sense.
Wow. Okay, what books do I need to read to figure out me and us?
I would say
Sapiens?
one.
I don't know.
No, I mean there's a million books out there, but I would say the one that probably I'm the biggest fan of is Jordan Peterson.
Mm,
Go to Jordan Peterson's
12
YouTube
rules.
channel. Watch 2017 Personality and Transformations. It's a 30-hour course. You could watch 2017 Maps of Meaning,
Oh my
and
God.
that's another 30 hours course. But you'll understand human beings more than most people do if you watch those two things.
Holy cow, 30 hours? Like I thought I looked into Jordan Peterson and read his book and he's got another book and listened to his podcast, but that's 60 hours if you watch both of those.
Yeah, I think I probably and this just tells you, like most people are lying to themselves when they say they're really going after their business or they're really all in or whatever. I probably have north of 1,000 hours of Jordan Peterson alone, like that
Mm,
I've studied.
wow.
But it's like I wanted to understand, like, and this leads into the mental health game is as you venture out into the unknown, you're going to experience things you make you uncomfortable. It's like you've got to throttle that a little bit. It's like your brain. If you have you ever like done too many things at once, like just anything, like juggling. I can juggle 3 balls, but as soon as I went to 6 balls, they started falling all over the place.
Yeah.
It's very similar to that. Your brain can only handle so much new information at once. Otherwise we begin to feel overwhelmed, and then when we feel overwhelmed, we isolate, we retreat, we go into fight or flight mode.
Hmm.
And so you've got to open up enough courage to take action. But as soon as you realize I'm kind of doing too many things at once here, you've got to throttle yourself and kind of scale it back a little bit and say, okay, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, I need to reduce the load right now. And I need to just kind of realize, hey, it's all going to be okay. I can trust and allow I'm going to get there. And like I said, it's a letting go process. It's getting clear on what you want and letting go on everything that doesn't align with you getting what you want.
Mm. Jesus, feel like I'm right there, especially with this new high ticket sales gig I got. I'm like overwhelmed. I'm bombarded, so many videos and so much, so many different softwares and all that. I'm just like, and I can feel my body. And then I just had to go on a walk a couple times a day and just kind of sit there and be like, okay. And you're,
That's the falling in love with the process. I realized like the process I was playing for a long time was the entrepreneurial process, but sleep matters, your fitness, exercise matters, nutrition matters, how much water you drink matters,
yep.
because that's your brain's not optimally working if you're not getting sleep, if you're not feeding it proper nutrition. And that's something I had to like really work on for a long time. I still work on it today because like when I feel overwhelmed, first thing I do, take a break, get some sleep, focus on my breathing. What did I eat a sandwich in the last 12 hours, you know? And it's amazing how fast you'll snap back if you can just recognize that overwhelmed feeling is telling you need to take a break.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
started getting a little hint of that through
Yeah,
Cal
Cal
Newport.
Newport.
I started getting a hint of that, like looking at what these amazing minds were doing in order to pull off this amazing amount of, say, creativity or deep work. Like
Yep.
there's only a certain window of time in which I can apply myself at that level of focus or that level
That's
of
it. And
effort.
everybody's different is the thing. So like Cal Newport has two great books. Deep Work is one of them.
Mhm.
The other one is Digital Minimalism, which is awesome.
Mhm.
But you need to figure out the pattern for yourself that you can repeat and sustain over the next decade. And like in Deep Work, he uses a story of a guy that transcribed like 10,000 pages of ancient text. And somebody
Mhm.
was like, "How'd you do that?" He said, "Well, I worked 90 minutes in the morning, I took a 90-minute break, and I worked 90 minutes in the afternoon, and I did that for 10 years." And
Mhm.
so there's going to be a law of diminishing returns for all of us, and
Yep.
you've got to find that perfect rhythm for you, and again, fall in love with that process. But if you can say, I go to sleep at this time, I wake up at this time, I work out at this time, I work at this time, I take breaks at this time. If you can figure out that optimal rhythm for
Mhm.
yourself, like you'll get there faster. It's like the tortoise and the hare thing. It's
Mhm.
like you can sprint as hard as you want for 8.5 years and spend a couple $100,000, or I could have fallen in love with the process and probably gotten there a lot faster
Yeah,
and
yeah.
not been so damn burnt out.
Yeah, and in the diminishing returns thing, like
Yeah.
that's exactly what happens. Pouring more on what's going on makes it worse, not better. And
Yeah, I think back to like Tim Ferriss's original 4 Hour Work Week book. It's define what you want, eliminate everything that's not supporting you and getting what you want, automate everything that you can automate that can be done without you, and then
Mhm.
liberate yourself from the business. And it's like he had that deal method in his book. It's
Mhm.
like that's really it. It's like the more clear that you are, the easier it's going to be to add or eliminate things that don't need to be in your life.
Mhm.
But the more clear that you are, the harsher you're setting yourself up for people to judge you and for you to judge yourself. If you got very clear and said, I'm going to drop 26 pounds in the next 45 days, a very specific thing, you've now set a predetermined condition for failure, where
Mhm.
it's like at the end of 46 days, you either did it or you didn't. It's a binary question. And people don't like to be judged like that, because when we get judged on our failures, we feel subconsciously, biologically, that's going to, me being judged as a failure is going to hurt my chances to reproduce. And that's going to hurt my chances of outliving this little lifespan I've got. And so we don't like to set up those very harsh conditions for failure. And again, that's why the New Year's resolutions always fail. As
Mhm.
soon as we see that we're failing, we actually find an excuse. We lie to ourselves. We back out of the process and we get very creative. Like, oh, I actually turned my ankle. I didn't really, I would have lost that weight, but I turned my ankle. And so we're
Mhm.
lying to ourselves because we don't like to be judged.
Yeah,
So
I've had to really break things down and chunk things down into micro pieces. And like you
yep,
said, pat myself on the back because I read that in Tiny Habits, how
yep.
that produces different, chemicals in the brain, feel good chemicals or whatever, and leads me to want to keep succeeding. But I was always having too big of goals, and
Yeah.
then if I didn't meet them, it was just like, I suck. I'm a piece of
I
shit.
think
I'm
one other
worthless or
guy,
whatever.
talking on this topic that I really like is Andrew Huberman. He's
Yeah,
got a podcast called the Huberman Lab.
so good.
But if you can understand psychology, neuroscience, like you'll really start to go down that rabbit hole. You don't need any of that to have a working business, though.
Hmm.
It helps to understand people, especially if you're like me. I had to figure out why do I keep repeating some of these patterns.
Hmm.
So I just went down that rabbit hole. But you really need to solve a specific problem for a specific person and give them the result that they're after and charge money for it. And that's as simple as business needs to be. Is you got to run into people that don't know you exist.
Mm-hmm.
Find out what their problem is. And if you can solve their problem, you just say, would you like help with that?
Mm-hmm.
And I charge this much. That's business in a nutshell. You have a
Yeah.
problem, I can solve it. Would you like help with that? Here's how it works. Here's how much I charge.
So goddamn simple.
Yeah.
That's amazing. All right. So, I mean, I could talk to you for another 4 hours personally. I love this. This is amazing, dude. You're just blowing my mind. But yet it's so simple, but having somebody to talk to and ping pong thoughts off of it, it really breaks through the chatter that can kind of build up. Like you said, if we're isolating or we're by ourselves and there's nobody else who has an understanding of the path forward. And I keep picking up, man, the amount of time and dedication and experience. It's just being transmitted. So I really want to just say I really appreciate you taking the time with me today. I'm not going to close this down quite yet, but we'll get there. So where is Mike, the makeover master? We're doing a makeover right now, headed in the future? Let's say not too far out, but like within the next 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, I would say I'm gonna spend the rest of my career focused on entrepreneurial mental health and well-being. And
Mm-hmm.
so I want to do some amazing things. I'd actually like to get the business to the place where it becomes a charity brand,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm just finding people that need my help and helping them. But it's important to me because I've not only watched people take their life, I've watched people and how hard it is on them when they're not getting the results they want. And I know
Mm-hmm.
exactly how I felt. I had legit 4 near mental breakdowns over 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what that feels like. It's not a pleasant feeling. So I'm going to spend the rest of my career trying to help people not like avoid those deep dark moments if I can. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where I think I'm going to help them through strategy. I'm going to help them through branding. I'm going to help them through just conversations, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where I'm taking my business and my life.
Wow, so key. And that's beautiful. I mean, that is an amazing cause. And that's what I relate to. You're talking about having 4 mental breakdowns and
Yeah.
like I mean, like I mentioned at the top of the show, like I got sober when I was 23. And the only thing that has got me close to considering going back to my old life, which was hell, has
Yeah.
been when I shut the business down. And in this 2 year period of time dealing with the money and dealing with the failure or what was perceived as a failure. And I've done work and talked to my brother, and he's really helped me understand, like, dude, you were so successful. You helped so many people, like thousands of people across 15 years. Like that thing you built was amazing. So I've had to do the work. But that was the closest I got to, and it was coming from a so-called failure, or it was coming from dealing with like, wow, I was here once with my finances and now they're here plus some. Now I'm way down there in debt. So you did mention a couple recommendations. Huberman Lab podcast, easy way to listen to his works. Jordan Peterson, we talked Cal Newport. Just a couple quick wrap-up questions. What are 3 other book recommendations, whether it's mental health or whether it's online business, that you could give the listeners?
Yeah, I
I
would
love your
say,
book list on your website, by the way.
yeah, I do have a full list on my website, but I would say How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World by Harry Brown was an important book for me.
Mm-hmm.
It breaks down a lot of the mental traps that we fall into. Um, I think Eugene Schwartz, Breakthrough Advertising, has got to be a must read if you're going to try and market or advertise your business in some way.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very deep book. It might take you literally a decade to process all the gold that's in that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm trying to think of other books. I've read so many. Um, I'm trying to think entrepreneur. Oh, I would say Clockwork by Mike Michalowicz. That'll help get you out of the day to day of your business. Profit First is another book by Mike Michalowicz. Like if I had to start over today, I would say start with the finances of the business, because the finances will help you make smarter business decisions. There's either money there to do what you want to do or there's not.
Yeah.
Build systems and automation to separate yourself from the business, like Michalowicz talked about in Clockwork. Surround yourself with people that want to see you succeed. Find 5 or 10 people that you can have those conversations with, so when times are nasty, you have somebody you can talk to, so you don't isolate too much. And then find somebody that's specifically done exactly what you're trying to do and surround yourself with them and model their habits and behavior. And that's going to be your shortcut.
And then you have an event, it looks like you're going to be speaking at on August 23rd and 26th, called Unleash the Leader Within. Can you give us any hints or insights as to what you'll be sharing?
Yeah. That's my buddy Nate Bailey's event. He has an amazing event. I've seen him change people's lives with that event. Nate's an awesome guy. He's run 100 miles twice in his career, and an Army vet. And I'm speaking on all of this stuff. I'm talking about entrepreneurial mental health. I'm talking about the 4 clarity pillars, the foundations, and showing people exactly how to set this up for their business so that they don't break down and can survive in this game, but also thrive in this game long term.
And where's the best place for the listeners to get in touch with you, reach out to you, contact you?
Sure. They can just go to my website, themakeovermaster.com, or you can find me on social media at Mike Young Makeover Master, on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, all those places.
Okay. Folks, you know where to find them. Mike, this has been absolutely amazing. You dropped so many nuggets and so many bombs. Thank you for joining me on the Vision Hunters podcast today.
Cody, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, man.
Okay, folks, thanks for tuning in. That is all we have for episode 12. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review, hit the old like button, subscribe to the show, and share the show with everyone you know. If you'd like to go on the Vision Hunters journey together, you can find me over on Instagram at the Vision Hunters Podcast, and also at Cody Allen Story, CodyAlanStorey. Once again, welcome to the Vision Hunters Podcast. Have a beautiful day or a beautiful evening, depending on when you're listening to this show. Peace.